I want to thank everybody for coming here today. I really, really appreciate it. We're considering this to be a celebration and a wonderful send-off for our Fred. My friend Rebecca Field calls it a transition, and I like to think of it that way because it has to be thought of as a transition from this life to something more wonderful, we hope. So it's Fred's transition and our celebration for him to make that transition. And yesterday we scattered the ashes into the sea with a lot of beautiful flowers and some Jewish rye bread, because that's his favorite, from Los Angeles via Karen and Gordon. And now we can celebrate a lot of the things that we remember about him, so welcome. And the first thing that's on our little menu here is a few words from his son, his oldest child, Gene. Gene Knauer is going to come up and say a few words. Come on, Gene.
You know, I was thinking that, hello, by the way, I don't think I know all of you, but some of you I recognize, so welcome and thanks for coming today. I was thinking that if Fred was here with us, he would definitely want to be up here speaking, because he was very articulate. He could speak extemporaneously, which I can't, that's why I've written this down. He spoke, he was very opinionated, he spoke with ease, he could command attention, and he often had something profound to say. Fred lived many separate lives. He was born during the Depression in Brooklyn, New York. It was then a community full of recent immigrants from different parts of Europe. He was the oldest in a family of 7, a poor family with a father who was ill with emphysema contracted from working in the engine rooms of ships during World War II. Fred worked odd jobs to help support the family while still in high school. Long afterward, he remembered the shame he felt in receiving hand-me-down clothes from relatives. He was determined to carve out a better, more comfortable life for himself. Married in his early 20s, Fred enlisted ahead of being drafted in the Army during the Korean War. He saw combat, was wounded, and awarded the Purple Heart. He told stories of the privations and fear he experienced, the freezing Korean winter, the North Korean prisoners he guarded, the thought that he wouldn't make it home alive. After his tour of duty, he went to work for his father-in-law's couch cover and curtain company in New York. It was, in the Yiddish vernacular, the schmata business, the rag business, which covered everything from curtains to towels to fashion. Things that could be made in factories by women working at sewing machines. And the goods were sold by people like Fred, salesmen with territories, department store chains as customers. Schmoozing, entertaining, selling. Fred was great at it. Hardworking, friendly, genuinely interested in other people, self-confident, and with a burning desire to be successful. Moving to California with his wife and infant son, he began another life. The move was like an immigration to a foreign country. The close-knit, extended families of New York were left behind. It was a painful but liberating experience. In the late 1950s, the Bay Area was an affordable place to live and buy a house with mild weather and more accepting, more open, less entrenched cultural attitudes than the East, at least towards Caucasians. Fred fell in love with San Francisco, where he founded Western Curtain Manufacturing Company on Brannan Street in the early 1960s. By then, he also had a daughter. Within a few years, he and his wife had commissioned the building of a redwood and glass house in the Piedmont Hills. There were skylights and an atrium. Inside, every door was painted a different color. It was Peter Max meets Joe Eichler. In the late 1960s, the United Farm Workers movement and the civil rights era influenced higher salaries for factory workers in the Bay Area. Manufacturing in San Francisco became prohibitively expensive. And Fred, ironically enough, a liberal Democrat who voted for Adlai Stevenson, Eugene McCarthy, and George McGovern, was forced to move his business to Sparks, Nevada. He soon sold it to a conglomerate. Another new life began. Fred had to adapt to a changing world. He opened the San Francisco office of Computer Horizons, a New York-based contracting firm that placed computer programmers and analysts on assignments with Fortune 500 data centers. It was all about schmoozing, establishing relationships. The art of the deal, you should pardon the expression. Never exactly acclimating to being told by others what to do, Fred opened his own firm, Knauer Consulting, a year later. Computer systems and Fred Knauer? He never used one, never sent a single email, but his grasp of people was always solid. And he quickly established relationships with IT executives at Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Pacific Bell, and many other companies. Knauer Consulting gained a foothold. By the mid-1980s, he had parted ways with his first wife, Judy, who spent the rest of her life in Israel in a religious community. Fred met and married Linda, becoming a stepfather to her daughter Becky and son Paul. Upon selling Knauer Consulting in 1996, Fred began what I believe to be the happiest chapter of his life. Living on Funston Street near the park, hosting large dinners and gatherings, always with a joke or two to tell. Enjoying crossing the bay to shop at Berkeley Bowl or to hang out with old friends on Saturday mornings in downtown Oakland, and to visit his 2 grandsons in Berkeley. Vacationing in Hawaii, reading history, collecting fine wine, debating conservatives. These were good years. Fred had a mercurial temperament at times, but he was always devoted to Linda and to her parents and children, and especially in recent years to Paul. He loved them deeply. They were his life, along with his children, grandsons, extended family, and close friends. So we honor you today, Fred. We miss you. Your memory will live on. You're unforgettable. Your generosity, hospitality, and wisdom left a unique and indelible mark on all who had the privilege of knowing you.
Beautiful.
I'm so grateful to him that you got all that in there, because I tried to remember all the details of his work life, and it all mushed up together for me, and you made it very clear, and you really captured him. Oh, that was great. I think we don't have Joanna next. We have her a little bit later, right? Yeah. The next person who's going to come up is my daughter, Rebecca, and she has put a very, I think, sweet slideshow together. And are you ready to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to speak a little bit first, though.
Oh, good.
Okay. Why don't you sit?
I'll sit in your seat. I'll be a seat warmer.
It's like the Oscars.
Yeah, it's the Oscars.
Hi, I'm Rebecca DiLiberto Adkins, and I am Fred's stepdaughter. I like to think of myself as his daughter, too. It's been a very tumultuous few months for me and for our family, because obviously losing Fred was devastating, and I also just had a baby, and I had this baby a month before Fred passed away, and they didn't get to meet. And if I have any regrets about my relationship with Fred, that's the only one left, so that's pretty good. But it's been very hard for us that he didn't know her. I like to think he can know her now from a different vantage point. So I've been putting together this slideshow the last couple nights, and it's pretty incredible what you'll see. You'll see Fred as a little boy, as Jean was talking about, with his family in Brooklyn. You'll see him as a Boy Scout. You'll see him dressed as the Lone Ranger at a local movie theater where they have like a setup of the horse that the Lone Trade. Who was the horse? Tonto? No, that's the friend.
No, who was the horse?
Who's the horse? Hi-Ho Silver, right. You'll see him with the replica of Silver. Then you'll see him in the army. And you'll see him guarding prisoners of war in Korea, as Jean mentioned. And you'll see him in a photo that looks like it was lifted straight from Mad Men, with Judy and Jean and Claudia looking very, very glamorous. And then again in Las Vegas, where I now know I didn't even know Western Curtain was in Las Vegas, so that was new for me. It's incredible. What? Sparks.
Oh, Sparks.
Okay, Nevada, same thing. So you'll see Entrepreneur Fred, and you're going to see Western Curtain itself, which was a huge factory, and I think we all probably wish he still had that real estate on Brannan. You'll see him showing his wares at a convention, a big curtain out, young Fred showing it off, doing his sales. Then you're going to see political operative Fred at the McGovern campaign, working for Eugene McCarthy, getting a letter from Senator Kennedy thanking him for coming to have a private meeting. You'll see them dancing to Greek music in the social pages where it says, you know, Senator Kennedy was in town and they had a party that would honor Zorba the Greek, and there's Fred in the middle of the picture dancing. And then you'll see that, you know, our little family came into the picture. And I see that time as the great love story between my mom and Fred. And as you can probably imagine, I had a little bit of conflict about that because I had another dad who I loved very much, and he was far away. And I think Paul and Fred had a very easy love story. Paul was very little when Fred came into his life, and the romance between them is clear in some of these photos. I was a little more hesitant because I was a little older. I was a tween. I felt like I was betraying my own father to be too close to Fred. And Fred was always fond of telling a story that spotlit my love of carbs, which I still have, which was that we went to my favorite restaurant, Yoshida Ya, to get to know each other right off Union Street. I'm sure some of you remember it, when I was probably 8 years old. And in order to keep from talking much to Fred, it was just the two of us, I kept eating bowls of rice because they would refill your rice. And at 8 years old, I had 9 bowls of rice. That's more than one per year. And I succeeded in kind of keeping my mouth shut during that dinner. And a lot of that was because I felt a little guilty. And so doing this slideshow, I had a hard time finding pictures of me and Fred until the date when Fred became my father for sure, which was November 18th, 1999. And that was the date of my brother's accident. And I think any of us in this room, many of us anyway, saw the true mettle of a person like Fred, the way that he handled that, and the way that he saved my family. I like to think he lived to this advanced age, despite having a heart condition that many doctors, including his specialist, Ed Kirsch, would have said could have killed him 30 years ago. It's a miracle he lived to 86, because he had responsibilities that he couldn't walk away from. And he raised Paul twice. And from that day on, you know, despite having conflicts about my own father and Fred's role in my life, I never had a conflict again because, you know, it's like my father was a big wave, but Fred was our ocean. He was always there for us. And I'm grateful for that ocean, and I could still look at that ocean and think of Fred because that's where we scattered him, in that bay. And as you'll see, we had a lot of fond family memories that you'll see in this slideshow that I will always remember, but more than anything, Fred showed me how to be a man, and in this age of feminism, I like to think of myself as a man who aspires to be just like Fred. So now, without any further ado, check this out, and I think you will really enjoy it. Oh.